Madhava Kunya Bihare Jai Hurad Umadhava Kunya Bihare Gopijana Malaba Kirivaragare Gopidana Palaba Kirivaragare Yasodananda Brajajana Ranjana Yasodananda Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tera Vanachare Yamuna Tera Vanachare Jai Hurat Umadhuva Kunya Bihare Jai Hurat Umadhuva Kunya Bihare Gopijana Banaba Irivaruragute Gopidana Balaba Irivaruragute Yasunanana Brajadana Rannahuna Yasunanana Brajadana Ranjana Unate Rabbanachare Yamanate Hamanachati Jai Hurad Umadhuva Kunya Bihare Jai Hurad Umadhuva Kunya Bihare Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravatakacharya Also Teta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Sabaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnav Vrind Ki Jai Namacharya Shridhar Thakur Ki Jai Param Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopika Sayam Kund Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Mathuradam Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Yamuna Ki Jai. Shrimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Gaur. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 16th chapter, text 36. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Akashanubhavo Asya Na Deva Vidmahe Bhavangri Renu Sparashadikaraha Yad Vanchiya Shrir Lalanacharat Tapo Vihaya Kaman Su Chiram Drita Vrata Tashanubhavo Shanadeva Vidmahe Tavangri Renu Sparashadikaraha Yadvanchaya Shrir Lalanacharat-tapo Vihaya Kamam Suchiram Drita Vrata Kashanubhavo Syanadeva Vidmahe Tavangri Renu Sparashadikaraha Yadvanchya Shrir Lalanacharat-tapo Vihaya Kaman Suchiram Drita Vrata Kashanubhavo Syanadeva Vidmahe Tavangri Renu Sparashadikaraha Yadvanchya Shrir Lalanacharat-tapo Vihaya Kaman Suchiram Drita Vrata. Okay. Kashanubhavo Neva Vidmahe Anyone else? Okay, no one else? Kasya of what? Anubhavaha, a result. Asya of the serpent Kaliya. Na, not. Yeah, somehow or other the thing on the side, Jagat set it up yesterday and you just have to use the wheel. Deva, my Lord. Vidmahe, we know. Tava, your. Angri, of the lotus feet. Renu, of the dust. Spadasha, for touching. Adhikaraha, qualification. Yat, for which. Vanchiha, with a desire. Shri, the goddess of fortune. Lalanha, the topmost woman. Acharat, performed. Tapaha, austerity. Vihaya, giving up. Kaman, all desires. Suchidam, for a long time. Vrita, upheld. Vrita, her vow. So, translation. O Lord, we do not know how the serpent Kaliya has attained this great opportunity of being touched by the dust of your lotus feet. For this end, the goddess of fortune performed austerities for centuries, giving up all other desires and taking austere vows. She can repeat. O Lord, we do not know how the serpent Kaliya has attained this great opportunity of being touched by the dust of your lotus feet. For this end, the goddess of fortune performed austerities for centuries, giving up all other desires and taking austere vows. So, there's no purport, but we're going to speak on this. Kasyana vavausyana deva vitmahe davangri renum sparashadikaraha yadvanjya shrir lalanacharattapo vihaya kaman suchiram jita vrata. So, Om Gana Timiranda Shah Gananjana Shlakya Chakshurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, in the commentaries by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he mentions that basically it's not because of austerities or penances or even dharma that Kaliya has actually achieved this particular position. And that's very interesting. And actually that was brought out, I think it was mentioned the other day, but it was brought out in the conversation between Maharaj Rahugana and Jadabharata. Rahuganai tat tapasa nayati nachejya nirva panad grahadva nachandasa naiva jalad nusurya bana mahat pala rujopishekam. Okay? And the statement is, of course, Jadabharata was the incarnation or reincarnation of Bharat Maharaj, who was previously a deer. And he was carrying the palanquin of King Rahugana. And so he stated, when King Rahugana actually discovered he was a devotee, he stated that Rahuganai tat tapasa niyanti. My dear King Rahugana, you're not going to become Krishna conscious tapasa by austerities. You know, I was listening to a memory of Srila Prabhupada's that are Prabhupada's disciples, where it was actually quite interesting. The devotees, there were 3 or 4 sannyasis in Mayapur who were undergoing this Chaturmasha vow. And they had beards and they were sitting down and chanting and everything like that. And Prabhupada arrived in Mayapur at that particular time and he said, what are you doing? He said, they said, we're observing Chaturmasha. And Prabhupada basically said, shave up and ship out. Shave up and go and preach and do something practical. It was actually quite funny. So tapasanayati. So by executing these austerities, of course, after Prabhupada left the planet, we find that many devotees started doing different austerities that actually Prabhupada never did. And I'm not saying it's bad to fast completely on Ekadasi or to do a nirjal and everything like that. There was one temple president recently, and he lost his temper with the devotees in the temple on Ekadashi because he was doing a nirjal and fasting. And the devotees wrote to me, and I wrote back. I said, don't worry, he's just fasting. Tomorrow he'll come back to normal. So tapasanayati, nor by taking sannyas. I was listening to also another class Prabhupada was giving, or morning walk Prabhupada was giving, and devotees were asking Prabhupada about taking sannyas, and Prabhupada said, what is the use of taking sannyas if you have these material desires, particularly sex desire? Actually, this was the conversation where one of my godbrothers, I know his name, I'm not going to mention, really misunderstood in one sense what Prabhupada was saying, because Prabhupada said if you take sannyas and you fall down, you're committing suicide. Prabhupada said it several times that that's the only recourse. Probably you remember that conversation.
I remember that.
And the devotee heard it, and he didn't hear the end of the conversation. He left in the middle of the conversation, where devotees asked Prabhupada, so we should do that in ISKCON, and Prabhupada actually indicated, no, it's not a good idea to do that in ISKCON. We should continue preaching Krishna consciousness.
Someone said you need to be a little louder in the mic.
Someone on what?
I got a text saying that the sound isn't loud enough, so.
Someone on, someone on what?
On
My per TV, okay. So, you turned it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. I'll just put this closer to my lotus mouth. Anyway, so anyway, tapasanayati, nor by taking sannyas, and the verse goes on and says, nor by doing certain austerities, putting yourself in fire, Chanda said, naiva jalagni surya, nor by putting yourself in ice cubes in the middle of the winter, and only by taking shelter, basically the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotees, taking a bath in the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotees. So that is the only method, according to Jadabharata. So anyway, so Vishwanath Chakravarti says it's not because of past austerity, and it's not because, actually it was Sanatana Goswami who said it's not because he got the association of the Yamuna Day because he was in the Yamuna, because he was committing offenses against the Yamuna. So it's not because of that he got that particular position of having Krishna dancing on his feet. It's really interesting. So let's refer to the second part of this particular verse, because even you have the goddess of fortune performing austerities for centuries, giving up all of his desires, and she didn't get that either. So this is quite remarkable. Let's talk about the goddess of fortune for a second. Actually, this is a story, there is a story in the Puranas about a conversation between the goddess of fortune and Krishna. She was performing austerities for many, many years. It's in the Vishnu Purana, actually, the story is there. And then Krishna asked her, what do you want? And she says, I want to have that relationship, conjugal relationship with you as a gopi. And Krishna said, no. You can't have that. And I'm going to describe why she couldn't have that. You can't have that relationship. And she said, well, can I just be on your chest as a line? And Krishna said, yes. I can be on your chest as a line. So that's what Jiva Goswami talks about that. So why is it, or how is it, that one can achieve let's talk about why didn't Lakshmi, first of all, talk about why didn't Lakshmi achieve the position of being a gopi? And I'm going to make a relation. I'm going to relate to the Chaitanya Charitamrita's discussion about this whole affair, in which Lord Chaitanya actually cites this particular verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10:16-36, and we're going to read some of the verses, not the purports here. And I'm going to just read the English. Let's see. What? CC 9, Majja 9, beginning with a text 111. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here is talking to Bhattacharya. Your worshipful goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, always remains on the chest of Narayan, and she's certainly the most chaste woman in the creation. So remember that in South India, particularly in Sri Rangam, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was spending the Chaturmasya period in the house of Venkatapata, and of course little Gopal Bhatta was there too, who later on became Gopal Bhatta Goswami. In this particular locale, they worship Lord Vishnu in the mood of awe and reverence, Lakshmi and Vishnu. So, and Venkatapata is a follower of the Ramanuja Sampradaya, Ramanujacharya Sampradaya, Sri Rangam. And so Lord Chaitanya is having this very friendly relationship with him, and he's teasing him. It's quite interesting. He's teasing Venkatapata about the goddess of fortune, why she was not able to attain the position of a gopi. So, however, my Lord, is Lord Shri Krishna a coward boy who's engaged in tending cows? Why is it that Lakshmi, being such a chaste wife, wants to associate with my Lord? Just to associate with Krishna, Lakshmi abandoned all transcendental happiness in Vaikuntha, and for a long time accepted vows and regulating principles and performed unlimited austerities. And here is Lord Chaitanya is actually quoting the same verse that we just read. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, O Lord, we do not know how the serpent Kaliya attained such an opportunity to be touched by the dust of your lotus feet. Even the goddess of fortune for this end performed austerities for centuries, giving up all the desires and observing austere vows. Indeed, we do not know how the serpent Kaliya got such an opportunity. Venkatapata then said, Lord Krishna and Lord Narayan are one and the same, but the pastimes of Krishna are more relishable due to their sportive nature. Since Krishna and Narayan are the same personality, Lakshmi's association with Krishna does not break her vow of chastity. Rather, it was in great fun that the goddess of fortune wanted to associate with Lord Krishna. Venkatapata continued, according to the transcendental realization, there is no difference between the forms of Narayan and Krishna, yet in Krishna there is a special transcendental attraction due to the conjugal mellow. And consequently, he surpasses Narayan. This is the conclusion of transcendental mellows. So, I'm just going to skip ahead to text 120 right now. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, I know that there is no fault on the part of the goddess of fortune, but still she could not enter into the rasa dance. We hear this from the revealed scriptures. And here's a quote from the Srimad Bhagavatam 10:47-60. When Lord Shri Krishna was dancing with the gopis in the Rasa Leela, the gopis were embraced around the neck by the Lord's arms. This transcendental favor was never bestowed upon the goddess of fortune or the other consorts in the spiritual world. nor was such a thing ever imagined by the most beautiful girls in the heavenly planets. Girls whose luster and aroma exactly resembled the beauty and fragrance of lotus flowers, and what to speak of worldly women who may be very, very beautiful according to material estimation. But can you tell me, this is Lord Chaitanya speaking, why the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, could not enter the rasa dance? The authorities of Vedic knowledge could enter the dance and associate with Krishna. Of course, the authorities of Vedic knowledge were the sages in Dandakaranya forest who had seen Lord Ramchandra and then felt this conjugal attraction for him, and Lord Ramchandra said that in the future you will be able to have that association with me. So Venkatapat is all bewildered by this, skipping ahead. Then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains, Lord Krishna has a special characteristic. He attracts everyone's heart by the mellow of his personal conjugal love. By following in the footsteps of the inhabitants of the planet known as Brajaloka, Goloka Vrindavan, one can attain the shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. However, in that planet, the inhabitants do not know, here's the key right now, that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There, someone may accept him as a son and sometimes bind him to a grinding mortar. Someone else may accept him as an intimate friend and attain victory over him, playfully mounting his shoulders. The inhabitants of Brajabhumi know Krishna as the son of Maharaj Nanda, the king of Brajabhumi, and they consider that they have no relationship with the Lord in the rasa of opulence. One who worships the Lord by following in the footsteps of the inhabitants of Brajabhumi attains him in the transcendental planet of Braj, where he is known as the son of Maharaj Nanda. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then quoted, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, the son of Mother Yashoda, is accessible to those devotees engaged in spontaneous loving service, but he is not as easily accessible to mental speculators, to those striving for self-realization by severe austerities and penances, or to those who consider the body the same as the self. The authorities in the Vedic literature were known as the Shruti Ganas, worshiped Lord Krishna in the ecstasy of the gopis and followed in their footsteps. There's another key right there. I mean, there's two keys we gave so far. One is you cannot have knowledge of Krishna as God. And the second one is you have to follow in the footsteps of the gopis. There's two. Of course, you may say, I have knowledge of Krishna as God. Prabhupada had knowledge of Krishna. Well, you have to forget that knowledge when you're entering into the pastimes of Krishna. But for preaching, yes, you can accept that knowledge. And for, of course, Sambandha Gyan is very, very important to remain fixed in Krishna consciousness. So we're talking about devotees on a higher level of Krishna consciousness than or my good self or my bad self. The personified authorities of the Vedic hymns acquired bodies like those of the gopis and took birth in Brajabhumi. In those bodies, they were allowed to enter into the Lord's Rasa Leela dance. Lord Krishna belongs to the cowherd community, and the gopis are the dearmost lovers of Krishna. Although the wives of the denizens of the heavenly planets are most opulent within the material world, neither they nor any other women in the material universe can acquire Krishna's association. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, wanted to enjoy Krishna and at the same time retain her spiritual body in the form of Lakshmi. However, she did not follow in the footsteps of the gopis in her worship of Krishna. So Vyasadeva, the supreme authority on Vedic literature, composed the verse beginning Nayam Fukapo Bhagavan, because no one can enter into the rasa dance in anybody other than a gopi. Because here we're talking about gopis, and Kaliya is definitely not a gopi. But it's an indication of the mood that's required in order to enter Vrindavan. So anyway, so that's the last reference. And so, in other words, as pointed out, now we're going to read from the Bhagavad Gita that also corroborates this particular point of exclusive devotion to Krishna, where Prabhupada reveals his mood as a Brajavasi, having exclusive devotion to the form of Krishna in Vrindavan. And there's actually two purports to two verses in the Bhagavad Gita that illustrate this point, that Prabhupada's mood actually comes out. One purport is the 9th chapter, 13th verse of Bhagavad Gita, the last paragraph here, where Prabhupada says, the Mahatma does not divert his attention to anything outside Krishna because he knows perfectly well that Krishna is the original Supreme Person, the cause of all causes. There's no doubt about it. Such a Mahatma or great soul develops through association with other Mahatmas of pure devotees. There's that association, following the footsteps of the gopis or following the footsteps. We're talking about Raganuga Bhakti right now. Following in the footsteps of Mother Yashoda or one of the devotees in parental relationship, or even Rohini in Vrindavan. Following in the footsteps of Subal, if one's a coward boy or whatever. Pure devotees are not even attracted by Krishna's other features, such as four-armed Mahavishnu. It's an interesting statement that Prabhupada gives here, because there are pure devotees of Lakshmi Narayan. Hanuman is a pure devotee of Sita Ram, right? So here Prabhupada says pure devotees are not even attracted by Krishna's other features. So it appears to be a little, isn't it? Appears to be a little contradiction. But that's his mood. Prabhupada here is revealing something very, very intimate to us. So one has to really unpack that statement, because you do find pure devotees attracted to other features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are simply attracted to the two-armed form of Krishna. They are not attracted to other features of Krishna, nor are they concerned with any form of demigod, obviously, or a human being. They meditate only upon Krishna in Krishna consciousness. They are always engaged in the unswerving service of the Lord in Krishna consciousness. Quite an interesting. And there's a similar purport in the 18th chapter, text 65, the purport, where Prabhupada says pretty much the same thing. Let's see, we go. It's also the last paragraph in that purport, where Prabhupada says, these words stress that one should concentrate his mind upon Krishna, the very form with two hands carrying a flute. Now it's interesting, in the previous paragraph, Prabhupada talks about following the path of Arjuna. And there's a contradiction there. Because if you're following the path of Arjuna, who is one of the main characters of Bhagavad Gita, if you haven't discovered it yet. So if you're following the path of Arjuna, you're not going to concentrate on Krishna playing a flute. You're going to concentrate on Krishna, Parthasarathi, the driver of the chariot, right? So here, it's so interesting how Prabhupada's bhav, his mood, comes out here in the purport. So let me continue. Let me read the previous part of the previous paragraph. Everyone who follows the path of Arjuna can become a dear friend to Krishna and obtain the same perfection as Arjuna. Then Prabhupada says, these words stress that one should concentrate his mind upon Krishna, the very form with two hands carrying a flute. One really has to understand the Siddhanta to understand what Prabhupada is saying here. Siddhanta, not only Siddhanta, but, bhav, all the bhavs, and have read the Nectar of Devotion thoroughly to understand even Bhagavad Gita and Prabhupada's purports. The bluish boy with a beautiful face and a peacock feathers in his hair. There are descriptions of Krishna found in the Brahma Samhita, the literatures. Here Prabhupada again starts to show his exclusive devotion to Krishna. One should fix his mind on this original form of Godhead, Krishna. One should not even divert his attention to other forms of the Lord. So I'm going to explain why we celebrate Nishima Chaturasi in a second. The Lord has multi-forms as Vishnu, Narayan, Rama, Varaha, etc. But a devotee should concentrate his mind on the form that was present before Arjuna. So here Prabhupada is going back and forth. Form present before Arjuna, which is not Brajendrananda. It's interesting, isn't it? It's not Brajendrananda. And then Prabhupada's talking about Krishna Vrindavan playing a flute. Concentrate. So these are ecstatic, like Prabhupada said, the purports are his ecstatic manifestations of his ecstasies. You know, it's more than just philosophy. It's a manifestation of Prabhupada's ecstasy. That's why Prabhupada said that purports are more important than the verses, because you can understand so much by unpacking these purports. Concentration of the mind on the form of Krishna constitutes the most confidential part of knowledge, and this is disclosed to Arjuna because Arjuna is the most dear friend of Krishna. So, now we're going to try to explain how we celebrate. Whoops, one of my internet connections. Okay. Why we celebrate the Shiga Chaturasi, or Vamana's appearance day, or all the various incarnations. And I think it's very easy to explain, because Jayadeva Goswami has done that for us in the Gita Govinda. Gita Govinda is a very intimate work. Yet Jayadeva Goswami has encapsulated or mentioned the Dasha avatars in the Gita Govinda in the famous Dasha avatar slokas, Keshavadrita, Narahari Rupa, Keshavadrita, Kurashavira, Haladara Rupa, and at the end of each verse, it's Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa. O Krishna, Keshava. Keshava refers to Krishna with long, beautiful black hair. Anyway, there's other descriptions of our analyses of the word Keshava. Anyway, so he says, Krishna, you are doing this. So when a pure devotee of Krishna in Vrindavan worships Lord Nrsingadev, he is actually seeing Krishna in Vrindavan doing all these different, not in Vrindavan, obviously, but the Krishna in Vrindavan who is doing all these various activities. And I can refer to the famous pastime which we referred to before of the Chaturbhuja pastime of Krishna in Vrindavan. One time Krishna was hiding from the gopis and exhibiting himself as the four-armed Narayan form. And the gopis were simply interested in finding Krishna. Of course, they did offer obeisances to Narayan. They did know that Narayan was God. But they were simply asking Narayan, they weren't attracted to that form. They were simply asking Narayan, where is Krishna? And Radharani, as we know, when she came upon Krishna in that particular form, by dint of her great devotion, Mahabhav, then Krishna's extra two arms disappeared, and Krishna kept trying to manifest them again, and they kept disappearing. So in other words, one has to have exclusive, the point made by the acharyas is one has to have exclusive devotion for Krishna in Vrindavan and see all the other incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Krishna in Vrindavan, or not in Vrindavan, but the Krishna in Vrindavan, coming out and doing a lot of interesting things. And the gopis were aware of that. That's mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that the gopis were aware that Krishna did things. I mean, they criticized Krishna, for example, for in his incarnation as Lord Ram, and of course there was Lakshman there, for mistreating Surpanaka. You understand? For mistreating Surpanaka. So in other words, they were aware that Krishna does these other things, But their exclusive devotion was for Krishna. They didn't see the incarnations of Krishna as separate from Krishna. So that was the whole point. Exclusive devotion. Whereas Lakshmi didn't have that exclusive devotion for Krishna. She wanted to maintain her body as Lakshmi. The body of Lakshmi is the relationship with Narayan. And, she still wanted to worship in awe and reverence. So one asked, and she didn't want to, described here, follow in the footsteps or take on the mood of the gopis. So anyway, so these are some of the points. It's interesting when you unpack some of the Prabhupada's purports like that. So, on that happy note, we are going to, hopefully, share screens of the... I wrote that down. Yeah. Hold on a second. So the devotees can see the deities. I may be a little late. Agree to the deities. What? Radha Goloka Nanda ki jai. Where's that? Screen share. I'll be there 1 second. Jai. Radha Goloka Nanda ki jai. There we go. All right.